Support for this podcast comes from Frito-Lay and the 2023 Snack Bracket Championship. The Frito-Lay Snack-It Challenge is underway, and fans are voting on their favorite snacks to crown champion. We're talking about prime-time matchups between the best 64 snacks in the land. Will Ruffles Ridges reign supreme? Can Doritos defend their dynasty? Or will Smart Food use their smarts for a surprise upset? Only you can decide. Get in on all the action for a chance to win up to $1,000 or a year's worth of snacks. Let your snacks be heard. Just go to fritolaysnacket.sbnation.com to vote and enter for a chance to win. No purchase necessary. Sweepstakes ends April 3rd, 2023. Void where prohibited. Year's worth of snacks awarded in the form of 52 coupons, each good for one bag of chips. See official rules at fritolaysnacket.sbnation.com.
This is the Black Gold Banneret Podcast. Now, here are your hosts, Jeff Sharon and Eric Lopez.
Welcome to the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. I'm Jeff Sharon. He's Andrew Glukov. It's the two of us with you tonight on a day when... Drew, why does this always happen? Why is it... what is it about this sport of college football that we follow that right when you think, oh, it's going to be an easy day, we're going to have just a few little things to talk about, maybe catch up on some things that have happened in the news, all of a sudden something just an asteroid drops out of the sky on everybody in the world of college football, and then we all have to talk about it for the next week now.
I mean, college football logic, it's kind of an oxymoron. See, I last night couldn't sleep, and I watched the movie Greenland, where a comet comes down and blows the earth up, basically. Well, guess what? That happened.
I feel like college football is like, that animated GIF of CM Punk, and he's like, "Pay attention to me." I mean, that's college football all the time. The story we're talking about is a report in the Houston Chronicle that dropped this afternoon. We're recording this on Wednesday, July 21st. About Texas and Oklahoma now flirting with joining the SEC. We'll have the details for you on that in a second, but we're going to talk about that, how it might affect UCF, if it might affect UCF at all. I don't know. Spoiler alert, I have my doubts. Anyway, Bryson Turner will join us later to talk about UCF in the Olympics. The Tokyo Olympics are getting started with the opening ceremony on Friday, and 7 former UCF Knights are going to be competing in Tokyo in either the Olympics or the Paralympics. We'll be talking about that, and also some moves on the baseball diamond. Colton Gordon joins us on the show for an interview with Eric Lopez and Bryson to talk about him getting drafted by the Houston Astros and his time at UCF and his path now to the major leagues as he recovers from Tommy John surgery. And then later on, we will have listener questions. Drew and I will answer those listener questions for you from Twitter on a heck of a day to answer them. But all right, let's get to it, shall we? All right.
Let's start this circus.
It dropped earlier this afternoon. We thought that, when the whole 12-team playoff thing happened, Drew, we were all like, you know what? Realignment might be a thing of the past, right? And off the top rope come Texas and Oklahoma.
My God, it's Texas.
Is that Oklahoma's music? The Houston Chronicle breaks the news that Texas and Oklahoma could leave the Big 12 to join the Southeastern Conference, and that a possible expansion could come, quote, within a couple of weeks, end quote. Now, according to 247 Sports, who tried to advance the story, now everyone's jumping on board trying to get their own angle on it. Oklahoma and Texas began exploring Big 12, a departure from the Big 12 months ago. They've been, flirting, sending some, sliding into the DMs with the SEC for a couple months now. Of course, we're in the middle of SEC media days. Greg Sankey, the SEC commissioner, was asked about it. he said, "I'm here to talk about the 2021 season." So basically deflected that. There have been there have been a bunch of non-denial denials, as we call them in the journalism business, from just about everyone. Pretty much the only forceful replies came from the Texas A&M camp. By the way, this broke while Texas A&M was going through their SEC media days with Jimbo Fisher and all that.
Trolling.
Surprise, surprise. They've been kicking the tires on this thing for the last few months, reportedly. A spokesman for Texas said, quote, "Speculation swirls around college athletics. We will not address rumors or speculation," end quote. An Oklahoma spokesman said, quote, "The college athletics landscape is shifting constantly. We don't address every anonymous rumor," end quote. Non-denial denials.
Oh, that's like bad non-denial.
Yeah, that's like, yeah, that's like they're stitching the SEC patch onto their plaid jackets.
Nothing to see here. Please
nothing
disperse.
to see here. But anyway, it's as you could imagine, this sent Twitter into an absolute tizzy. I mean, it was absolutely wild. A&M had the only forceful reply. Ross Bjork, the athletic director for Texas A&M, said, quote, "We want to be the only SEC team from the state of Texas," end quote. "There's a reason why Texas A&M left the Big 12 to stand alone and have our own identity. That's our feeling."
I'll give you a hint.
Well,
it was Texas.
Yeah, that's what he's really saying is there's a reason why Texas A&M left the Big 12, and it's Texas.
Let's dumb it down real quick.
Okay.
What he's trying to say is, "Oh, hell no."
No, hell no. Not on my watch. Now, let's remember, Texas and Oklahoma have a grant of rights that goes through 2025 with their TV contract with the Big 12, which, by the way, is a deal with both ESPN and Fox. In order for the SEC to add a team, 11 of the 14 schools must vote yay. That's greater than 75%.
We already know one nay.
Exactly.
Probably a second one.
And can you guess how many other teams in the SEC used to be conference mates of Texas in the Southwestern Conference?
Well, we got Arkansas in the Southwest
or the Big
Missouri
12
in the Big 12.
Yes, exactly. So there's probably 3 nays right there. Okay. Wow.
Margin of error, 0.
All right. Now, a couple of other things we need to talk about in terms of context. SEC ADs have not formally discussed anything as of Wednesday afternoon. By the way, the SEC just did sign that massive television agreement with ESPN where they bumped CBS out of the way. Remember that? Starting in 2024. No scheduling has been discussed beyond 2025. Let's see what other info. Okay, so the so remember the TV contract ends up at 2025, and remember, 2 months ago, Drew, ESPN and Fox were approached by the Big 12. Big 12 was like, "Hey, what do you think about renegotiating our TV contract a little bit early?" And ESPN and Fox said no, which apparently ticked off both Texas and Oklahoma. Because remember, the Big 12 is basically, even though they won't admit it, the Big 12 is basically a wholly owned subsidiary of the University of Texas and the University of Oklahoma. There are 4 years left in that initially 13-year agreement with ESPN, Fox, and the Big 12.
Don't forget, if they renegotiated that contract and started a new one, that grant of rights goes away.
Or it gets re-upped. One or the other.
And Texas wasn't going to re-up it.
Yeah. So this is where we are. What's going to happen now in the next couple weeks? We have no idea, but Texas and Oklahoma have just grabbed the news cycle by the throat with this. Let me ask you, Drew, starting off.
Riddle me this.
Is there a fire to this smoke?
Well, this is about 10 years too late for starters. This is we've heard this song before. You know, when Texas, Oklahoma, and a bunch of others were flirting with the Pac-12.
Texas Tech and Oklahoma State. Yep.
Yeah, all of them. Colorado. They were all looking at going to the then Pac-10 to make the Pac-16. It failed. What was the primary reason why it failed? the Longhorn Network. So until the Longhorn Network goes away or is agreed to go away, Texas isn't going anywhere because it's a non-starter that any conference is going to take it. They have their own network, their own conference network. And the last thing they want is, product that they can benefit from being taken away from because a new member is monopolizing a current network. Now, what makes it interesting, and you and I talked about this off air before we started, is ESPN, who owns the Longhorn Network, has to really want it to go away because it's been a financial boondoggle, just an albatross on ESPN's bottom line. They've lost
all it is a transfer of wealth from ESPN to Texas.
They've lost a fortune on this. So unrolling and deleting the Longhorn Network would probably be worth half as much of any financial boon that would happen to the SEC as a result of membership change. So I could see ESPN being on board with this. You always want your TV partners to be on board with any move.
Well, gosh, here we are. Here we go again. I can't believe it. Brett McMurphy said on Twitter, Texas and OU inquired with the SEC about leaving the Big 12, and the SEC has interest in both schools, sources told Stadium. Quote, this will take some time, but there is interest on both sides, end quote, source said. Of course, why wouldn't there be? Added the Big 12 source, quote, this was inevitable, end quote. SEC bylaws require 11 of 14 schools to extend an invite.
This was inevitable. This was bound to happen.
But the question is how, okay, if it was inevitable, in what context? Okay. Well, are Texas and Oklahoma really serious about leaving the Big 12 and joining the SEC, leaving a conference that they already have unfettered control over, for being yet another dog in the pit? Or are they just trolling ESPN and or Fox to renegotiate this to step back to the negotiating table on this TV contract?
I think it's a bit of both. We already know, we've already seen how they flirted at leaving the Big 12 once before. It's not a stable conference. It really hasn't been ever since, Nebraska left. Things just kind of have always been kind of a tense piece, and that grant of rights is the only thing that's been holding it together. It's been the glue in that conference. And now, negotiating windows should be opening up very soon for a 2025 renewal. And that's why you're starting to see things fall apart. This was inevitable. They tried it with the Pac, the Pacific Conference, and
it's never going to work.
It was a bad marriage to begin with. Too many differing views, but I have a feeling that if they move over to the SEC, they're going to have buyer's remorse. I don't think they really know what they're getting into. They're not going to be the big dog. Look what happened to Nebraska when they moved to the Big Ten. They went from being, one of the big cheeses to being some second rate.
It was always the Big 12, the classic Big 12. There were three big schools: Texas, Oklahoma, Nebraska. You could say Kansas for basketball, but it was a Texas, Oklahoma, Nebraska joint. Right. And now Nebraska is just, in fact,
they're just an also-ran.
That relationship between the Big Ten and Nebraska is permanently damaged, and I don't know what's going to happen next with that thing. I mean, if these two dominoes fall, God knows what's going to happen. But the thing that I am, initially I was like, whoa, what's going on here? And then we talked about it. Eric Lopez made some calls. He is firmly in the camp, and he's done the legwork on this. Credit to him. Eric and I argue all the time. Okay,
like an old married couple.
But when he's right, he's right. Okay, and Eric has said that there's no way this thing is going to happen. Those four schools, and he said that LSU would be the fourth vote to no because according to him, LSU recruits the heck out of Texas in all sports. they're not going to say no, and then that'll pretty much be that. There's been some discussion about, the state of Oklahoma has, whether or not they've passed legislation that states that if Oklahoma leaves the Big 12, Oklahoma State must go with them wherever they go. However, that has roundly been said to be not true. I'm not 100% sure. I haven't checked the Oklahoma State Legislature register in a while.
What? I think don't do that on a regular basis?
No, not at all. I don't know why anyone would. The main issue, I think, is Texas and Oklahoma are not going to add they're not going to add the value to the SEC that the other schools, I think, would want, based on the expenses that they would incur for blowing up the Longhorn Network, for the amount of money that ESPN would have to shell out to the SEC in order to make that all happen, not to mention the legal bills, because this would probably result in a lawsuit. I just don't see it. It was a lot easier for Mizzou and A&M to pull this off when they did, but Texas and Oklahoma, I just don't see it. I just do not see it.
I mean, this comes down to, a money grab, especially for Oklahoma. They stand to benefit more than Texas does. Texas already gets a huge chunk of cheese from ESPN for the Longhorn Network. Oklahoma, their third tier stuff is with Fox Sports in that area, or Bally Sports, whatever they want to call themselves now. It's still so weird. For regional sports as opposed to a conference network. So they've got room to grow, because they still got a good payout, but they would get a better payout in the SEC. But other than that, I don't see really a benefit here. Everyone's like, well, the CFP. CFP is not everything. There's more to it. There's other sports, there's culture, there's this and that. So there's obviously more pieces in play, and there's more reasons that they're looking to move. But this isn't new. There's been talks of Texas and Oklahoma at different times, regarding the Big Ten, way back when. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, none of this is actually new. It's more the fact that this is the most smoke we've seen in a decade. And you have to go into wait and see mode and see if anything really comes of it, or was it just chatter to just derail Texas A&M? Because it could have been that too. Or if it was just a way to pander, to the masses and gain some positive PR ahead of TV negotiations. And the thing is, win or lose, if they stay or if they go, UCF may not even be impacted by this.
Yeah, that's the next thing I wanted to get to. That's the next thing I wanted to get to, which is the UCF angle. Immediately, whenever you see rumors of Texas and Oklahoma leaving the Big 12, the UCF to the Big 12 chatter, blossoms once again, on Twitter.
Do you even call it the Big 12 at that point if Texas and Oklahoma leaves?
Well, it doesn't have 12 teams in it now.
Well, there's nothing big about it either.
So, the question then becomes, the Big 12 is going to have to invite other teams. Well, that's not necessarily the case. B, I think it's probably more likely that the conference, that the Big 12 conference probably implodes upon losing Texas and Oklahoma, who are their two largest brands. And don't come at me with Kansas basketball, okay? I'm sorry.
No, but I think there's another reason, and I've mentioned it a number of times online, but no one's really thought of it. I think the other power conferences would want the Big 12 to fold and implode. They're part of the Autonomy 5. Mm-hmm. Do you want, these G5 schools that have been elevated up to now be part of your group of autonomy? Probably not. You want your power school. So, Oklahoma State, sorry guys, but do you really want a Cincinnati, a UCF, a Houston to really be part of that club? I could see them being happier if the rest of the Big 12 just kind of fizzles away.
Well, we've seen every level of speculation. I think there's a possibility that if somehow Texas and Oklahoma figure this thing out, you would probably see the Big 12 just kind of dissolve, like you said, dissolve and get scattered to the winds. So you'll see, you could possibly see, maybe two teams go to the Pac-12. So you'd probably see pick the two westernmost teams. So let's say Texas Tech and Oklahoma State. All right.
Does anyone want Texas Tech though? Would anyone honestly want Texas Tech?
Good question. Not a question that I can answer right now. I think you would probably see something happen with the Big Ten may get involved. People were throwing around Kansas, Iowa State, possibly.
Gotta be, as long as they're an AAU school, they have a chance.
Correct. And, we don't know what's going to happen with Nebraska either. Does that help to mend the marriage of Nebraska to the Big Ten? I have no idea.
I would just love to see the Big Ten just throw them out. I grew up in Big Ten
let's get wild. If that happens, where do they go?
they can go to the
right?
to the Pac.
Where do they go?
They go to the Mountain West.
What else? You could see the remaining schools kind of, so you're talking like Baylor, TCU, either Kansas State or Iowa State. If you're Mike Oresco in the American Athletic Conference,
you're calling West Virginia immediately.
Well, that's the other one that's kind of weird. Like, would you be able to get West Virginia, or is West Virginia going to give you the stiff arm and say, no, let's see if we can get into the ACC, and if the ACC decides to add 2, they could just, really, they don't have to add 2, they would add 1.5, because they could add West Virginia, and then it's a known fact that they want to get Notre Dame in there in football.
Hey, the new commissioner has flat out said, we want Notre Dame in football. Mm-hmm. And after the 2020 season, when they were a member for that 1 year, they had such a blast as a full member. The response from the Notre Dame administration was so positive towards it. From the athletic administration, it sounds like they over time could probably nudge the school administration to make a change.
Well, they're going to have to work out that TV contract with NBC.
I'm sure accommodations could be made.
But that leaves you with, I would not be surprised if all of these dominoes fall, and I think that there's a almost 0% chance. And listen, I'm happy to be wrong, because if this does happen, this could be good for UCF, right? Well, I mean, it could be good for UCF. It could be good for the American. I think it's more likely that that the leftovers from the Big 12 would merge into the American rather than teams from the American leave for the Big 12.
And the problem with leaving for the Big 12 is you don't know what you're going to land into.
Right.
Much like when the American first came together as the remnants of the Big East. They had no television contract. They had no perceived value. Now, granted, the 8 remaining schools in the Big 12, if you take out Kansas, is better than the bottom half of the American if you take out the top 4 schools. That 8 versus that 7, or that 7 versus 7. The Big 12 has a better conference. So what could happen is if the media partners are able to give some level of guarantees, you bring in these schools, we'll do this.
Yeah.
You then have to create a pecking order, and if you can either do 2 schools and replenish, or you can do 4 schools and get to 12 or so. I don't think they would go any higher than that because there's really not enough schools really that are valued enough. But I mean, the unfortunate part for UCF is they're not number 1 or number 2 in that situation. They're number 3 because number 1 would be Houston easily. You have to replace Texas and try to mitigate as much damage as possible. Thus, bring in Houston.
Which is in a massive metropolitan area, has a large student population.
Houston's
People
the
forget
number
that.
3 metropolitan area in the country.
Yep.
The number 3. Granted,
and Houston's a big school. It's not UCF size, but it's a big school.
Yeah, and the truth is, it may be Texas territory, but you're trying to mitigate as much damage as possible. Second team becomes Cincinnati because you have an opportunity now to fix the West Virginia glitch, which was they were an island.
West Virginia glitch. That's a good.
They were an island.
Great term.
I just think that they fixed the glitch, and then you go by geography, and then you look at strength of program, and UCF is by far better than the other traditional candidates in this situation. Memphis being a distant 4th, but I think at that point they would actually look at a Western for a 4th school. But it really depends on what they decide to do now, because they won't have those 2 elite schools. It's very possible that the partners are going to say, "Hey, we want inventory. Just bring us to 12."
I think the other thing might be, what would those remaining schools, and I know this is far afield, and I'm not on the train that says that this is ever going to happen, from the Texas and Oklahoma to the SEC side. So none of these dominoes fall without those dominoes falling.
Right.
But
everything's contingent on those 2 moving.
Yeah. But, what value? Well, the question that I have is where that would be even more contingent on the television contract, right? Because chances are those remaining Big 12 schools, without Texas and Oklahoma there, as the horses pulling the wagon, they got to find that media power somehow. So does tying yourself to Fox create that? I don't think so.
Nah, at this point, you look at CBS.
With CBS, well, at this point, you still got to look at ESPN.
I think room.
Well, that's the thing. That's why the American going to the American becomes the better option, because the American's already on board.
The American's on board, but then you have to be able to use the financial, trick of we've changed our membership, let's renegotiate. Because the truth is, you put a team, let's say Baylor and TCU, and you got 2 Texas schools. The American already has a decent Texas, presence there. SMU, TCU is just a very natural fit.
Mm-hmm.
Then Baylor's
big rivalry too, by the way.
Baylor's the next best thing from them. Maybe Oklahoma State instead. But you bring in either Baylor, Oklahoma State, and a TCU in there, and the value of that conference is no longer $7 million a school, and you have to fight for that. Now, despite what some people are thinking, the American is not going to throw anybody out. It's not happening. Just stop. They're not throwing any school out. There's been no school that has done anything to actually warrant being thrown out. It's not like when Temple got tossed, almost 20 years ago from the Big East because they didn't put any resources into trying to be competitive. They're trying. They're all trying. But you can't justify dropping a school. So you have to work within that system. The only school you can get away with dropping is Navy. The only one you could get away with it once their contract expires as a football-only member. Other than that, it's not. There's no one. So you got to be very choosy in who you bring in. You have 11 all football members right now. You can bring in 3, bring it to 14, and parlay that into a better deal. If the American can get up to 14, 15 a year, it's manageable, and then they can try to use that to springboard to more over time. TCU used to have a very strong program. Oklahoma State's been on and off. Baylor once upon a time was actually really good, but they made some very bad choices and paid a steep price for it.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have the American schools, which, as we've seen, don't command a lot of money
in comparison to the others.
In comparison, yeah, but they don't command a lot of money. We're looking at 8 figures a school, and the American right now can't do that. The brand value just isn't there.
So let me flip this on its head, and we'll finish up on this in just a second, because I want to talk about this more from a UCF perspective. Let's say Texas and Oklahoma decide, we really weren't going to leave for the SEC. We're just trying to extort more money out of our television partners, and get into the renegotiation.
A
of the
real
contract.
Possibility,
right? Which I think is actually, I think it's more than a possibility. I think that's the likelihood. I think that's what's really going on here. We saw in the previous rounds of realignment that when these TV contracts got negotiated, for that amount of money, the networks came back to the conferences and said, look, you're going to have to add some schools here in a couple of different cases, right? Could there be a possibility that if Texas and Oklahoma stay in the Big 12, that either ESPN or Fox or CBS or whatever, that they get their way, they get a new TV contract? Could one of their partners go back to them and say, hey, you got to add some schools in populated areas, preferably on the eastern side of the United States? Would then UCF become an attractive proposition for a further extorted Big 12?
Absolutely. They would definitely become much more valuable. They are in a good media market. Unfortunately, media markets don't carry the value they used to carry.
Right. The streaming revolution has happened, people.
Yep. Because of cord cutters and streamers and stuff, you have made UCF's market less valuable. Yes, I am one of those.
Unfortunately,
people.
but it's unfortunate, but it is true. I mean, the whole thing about cable subscribers in a given media market, that's gone now.
Yeah.
I mean, I should rephrase it. It's not gone, but it's no longer the power play that it used to be.
It's now about brand value. And the unfortunate truth is there is no school, not in the P5 right now, that is worth $20 million a year. None. Not even BYU. They're probably the closest one. But none of them are worth $20 million a year. And so you're going to have, as part of your media negotiations, some sort of give and take, because the Big 12 per school makes really good bank, because there's only 10 of them. But in order to convince them to bring in a couple more, there's going to have to be a little bit of give and take there. We already have an uneven distribution of media rights fundage in the Big 12. That's one of the things.
Texas and Oklahoma get more money than the other schools in terms of media rights.
Right. In fact, West Virginia for a long time only had a partial share of that diminished amount as joining, as part of their joining, because they needed the conference to bail them out of the Big East buyout. But when you look at it that way, for UCF, if they can still get an invite, even a $20 million, $15 million is better than 7. And it'll improve, but you're always going to, as opposed to the American, where every school is a little more balanced as far as control. It's the Texas Conference in the Big 12. Now, you have 1, and then you have 1A. And 1A is Oklahoma, but they're actually kind of like a quarter step below Texas. It's the Texas show, and you must pay homage.
Yeah. I wrote about this 8 years ago? Yeah, 8 years ago, when these expansion rumors popped up the first time. And I said, and I asked, this is on sportstalkflorida.com. This is how long ago this was. And I asked openly, I'm like,
so old.
Do you really want to be beholden to Texas and Oklahoma?
Do it for the Benjamins.
But do you really? Are the Benjamins worth that much to you that you're willing to, you're okay with them holding a gun to your head at every turn when it comes to conference policy?
I mean, at that point,
I'm not so sure I am.
I mean, at that point, give TCU a call, and ask, hey, how did the adjustment work for you?
Fair. I get it. This whole stuff makes me so anxious. It's just so wild, and we're gonna be following it for a while. And we got some questions from you, the listeners, on it in a little bit. Real quick, let me wrap this segment up with you, Drew, before we take a break and go to Bryson to talk Olympics and baseball. 2 weeks from now, all right? Are we seeing a press conference with Greg Sankey and Bevo and Boomer Sooner and all that, or is this just a media power play?
I'm gonna go with no.
Okay. I mean, that's what I'm thinking too.
I'm gonna go with no. I'm
thinking that the national college football media and in turn Twitter is being played right now by Texas and Oklahoma. I really do believe that.
Now, in 3 weeks, maybe a different thing. But in 2, no.
You get me started with you. Jeez. All right. Hit us up, Jeff_Sharon, Statboy Drew on Twitter for all your latest conference speculation news, all that fun stuff. This thing just drives me crazy. I can't even believe we're talking about this again. You know, Drew, and a lot of the listeners out there know how much I absolutely freaking hate all of the Big 12 talk because of how they yanked UCF around the last time. They paraded them in front like the Westminster Kennel Club dog show, and then decided, you know what? No, we're just going to take more money from ESPN and stand pat. And I'm
love the realignment though. You gotta love the speculation.
Oh yeah, it's fodder for content, that's for sure. But the way they treated UCF, and it's true, and Cincinnati, and Memphis, and USF, and I think a few other ones.
Oh, they treated them all terribly.
It really soured my outlook on the Big 12. And I know we as fans, we also see gigantic dollar signs, right? I just don't think that they'll be as gigantic as you think. It's going to require giving up a lot of power, a lot of leverage. UCF has plenty of leverage, I think, right now in the American. I think that's pretty clear. The trajectory of the American is going upwards, where the Big 12 is going downwards. I think that's another thing that we need to bear in mind is looking forward. You're already locked in with ESPN. You're not going into a situation where you're like, maybe we'll sign a deal with CBS or NBC or Fox or the WB. No, that doesn't exist anymore. But who knows where you're going to go with that? Stadium. Yeah, who knows?
This isn't Conference USA.
But or was it BNTV?
BNTV. I think that was probably Al Jazeera on that.
No. That was. I know that UCF played FIU on that.
Yeah, that was one of their partners. Yeah. UCF went back in the old CUSA days, played on Ion.
Ion, yeah, yep. I remember Ion. I remember the independent days. We were on Sunshine Network. So, but yeah, we're going to be following this pretty closely. I don't know what's going to come of it. I don't think much, but I reserve the right to be wrong and be surprised if something does happen. I just don't think it will. I'm not getting my hopes up, and I'm hoping you out there, UCF fans who are listening to us on this podcast, don't get your hopes too high either, because
keep your expectations tempered.
Yes, we've been down this road before. It has resulted in
almost always has been in misery.
Yes, that's exactly right. It's just always ended in misery.
Realignment has always been an absolute mess. I remember in 2012,
unless you produce content, then it's great.
Well, in 2012, I tried to write a primer for Realignment. At that time, it was also very busy. And I was at part 12 when I realized I'm never going to finish.
Yeah, I know.
This
is just going to go forever. This is the story that doesn't end.
It really is. I have the old copies. The website doesn't exist anymore, but I have the old copies of this primer. It was up to like
saving that bad boy. That's right.
Well, you just store it away, just for prosperity, part of your portfolio. Right. But yeah, it never ended. It had no ending.
All right. We'll be following it at UCF_Banneret on Twitter. Stick around. We'll get back. Bryson Turner is going to join me to talk about 7 UCF graduates in the Olympics in 7 different sports as the Olympics get started on Friday. And then also we'll talk UCF baseball. Colton Gordon, newly minted Houston Astro, will join us. Well, we'll join Bryson and Eric Lopez to talk about his time at UCF and his move to Houston, even in the midst of Tommy John surgery when we return. This is the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast.
Today's episode is brought to you by Cars.com. With over 2 million vehicles and 50,000 more added every day, Cars.com will match you with the perfect car for you, your budget, your life, your style. And if you're ready to say goodbye to your current car, Cars.com will get you an instant offer to cash it in. Just start by entering your license plate and get matched with a local dealer who will write you the check. So whether you're looking to buy or sell, just go to Cars.com. It's magical.
All right, welcome back to the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Jeff Sharon with you. Drew's dipping out for a little bit. Joining me, Bryson Turner, who's working on a couple of things, especially a couple of things that are going on right now, obviously having to do with the offseason. And the Olympics are getting underway. Opening ceremonies are on Friday in Tokyo. And UCF is once again well represented in the Summer Olympics in Tokyo. So Bryson's with us now to talk about it. And Bryson, we saw from a couple stories from UCF, actually from the university, that on some of the folks that are on some of the alumni who are competing in the Olympics, but the eldest veteran from UCF, of course, Phil Dalhouser, who graduated in 2002, 19 years ago. He's back in the Olympics. He's 41 years old, trying to chase down his second Olympic medal. Remember, he was the most outstanding player back in 2008 in the Beijing Games. He's back at it for USA Beach Volleyball. So what's the outlook on him right now, and when can we see him play?
So I took a look at the NBC sports broadcast schedule, and basically his first match is going to be on July 24th. And in real life, it's going to take place at 8 a.m. Eastern time. And I believe you should be able to stream it if you have the ability to stream NBC sports content.
8 a.m. Eastern is an actually reasonable time for things that are taking place 13 hours away.
For sure. But if you have to get up for work or something on that day, there is a tape delay of the match being aired on NBC Sports Network at 9 p.m.
Okay, and he's out there with Nick Lucena, who's his longtime partner. Actually, I caught one of their warm-up matches just prior to the pandemic in March of 2020, and they looked pretty sharp. They were playing, I think, the top 10 ranked team from Italy in an exhibition down at Lake Nona. And then, of course, the pandemic happened. But best of luck to Phil. I've met him a couple times. We've had him on the show before. This will be exciting. It'll we're all pulling for him. We're also pulling for Alina Reyes, goalkeeper for UCF, who graduated in 2011, one of the UCF Athletics Hall of Famer, arguably the greatest goalkeeper in UCF history, and she's back in the Olympics with her native Brazil. She played back in the Rio Games in her home country in 2016. She was initially an alternate for this year's team, Bryson, but she got some good news when they were training in Portland, Oregon. She's now been moved up to the big team. Is that right?
Yes. So from what I understand, the roster that the women's soccer teams were allowed to bring to Tokyo was increased to 22, which gave enough room for a line to be invited onto the main team instead of being an alternate. So here. So now she'll be able to go to Tokyo. She'll be able to go to her second Olympics officially full blown on the team. There, and so far Brazil's doing all right. Earlier today, like really earlier today, they beat China 5-0. So first game won handily. And next up, they'll be playing in real life at 7 a.m. on July 24th, our time, but versus the Netherlands. But there will be a aired tape delay of the game at 9:30 a.m. on NBC Sports Network. So if the line ends up playing, it could be there. I was talking with Eric Lopez earlier today, and he mentioned how he thinks that it's unlikely that we could maybe see a line play unless Brazil has handily handled group play. So we could possibly see her in the third group play according to him, which is going to be on July 27th versus Zambia, and it's going to be airing live on Telemundo at 7:30 a.m. But you can also stream it on NBC Sports if you have that capability.
That's when she played in 2016 in Rio. They did the same exact thing. Brazil had won their first 2 games in group play, and then with their regular starter, who was Barbara, and that gave Alini the chance to play in the third game before the group stage, and she recorded a clean sheet for Brazil. So hopefully she gets another chance like that. Now we got a couple. Now those are the 2 returning UCF Knights to the Olympics. We have some new UCF Knights heading to the Olympiad. And starting with weightlifting, tell me about Maddie Rogers. She's a recent graduate, 2020 graduate of UCF. She's a local kid from Apopka. And a really interesting story behind her. She's going to be competing in weightlifting.
That she is. It is going to be in the 87 kilogram weight class. She'll be competing on August 2nd. In real life, it's going to be streamed on NBC at 2:50 a.m. Eastern. So if you want to watch it in real life, go ahead and do that.
Grab a coffee.
But it will be aired on a tape delay. There's a replay of it that's going to be aired later in the day at 2:15 p.m. Eastern on USA Network. So if you want to keep an eye out for Maddie on that one, then that's where you can find her.
All right. Kristen Thomas, who graduated in 2016, she's on the USA Women's Rugby Sevens. Rugby is a fairly new Olympic sport, but she was a theater studies major. It says here at UCF, originally from Philadelphia, and part of what has been a very active UCF rugby club scene. I remember the UCF Rugby Club. They were very active even back when I was a student 20 years ago. And now they have an Olympian that they can count among their ranks. So tell us about Kristen.
So Kristen will be playing. We have some more pool play to handle. The entire rugby tournament is actually going to be played, from what I've seen, over the course of 3 days, which is going to be in Tokyo time. It is from July 29th to July 31st, but because of time differences, there will be games for Tokyo, they're on July 29th, but for us, they're on July 28th.
Rugby Sevens is wild, man. Those games go quick. If you've ever seen it.
I actually have a literal PDF file of a list of games that shows how quick they go. That I managed to find while researching this schedule for this. So if my time coordination is correct, because they list the game time kickoff times in Tokyo time, so I had to make sure I translated that correctly. But the first round for Kristen is going to be on July 28th for us, and it's going to be at 11 p.m. Eastern against China. Then
if you're a night owl, you can see it.
For sure. Then on match 2 on July 29th at 7 a.m., it's going to be versus Japan. So basically for them, this will basically be the same day. Mm-hmm. The United States team will be playing in the same thing. And then they'll be playing, let me see, I believe, I wrote a note on this.
Well, they're in a group with Australia, China, and Japan.
Australia, that's what it is. I wrote AUS, and I think I was writing it so fast I messed it up. But
or you thought it was Austria or something.
So, no, I wrote AUS, but my handwriting I was rushing. So they will be playing Australia in their third match at 11:30, and that would be on 11:30 p.m. on July 29th for us, but it would be July 30th for them. And then beyond that, we'll see if they can make it to medal rounds, and we'll be able to update you guys there on our respective social media accounts with the Black and Gold Banneret.
All right. One more that we want to talk about, and then we'll kind of get to sort of a grab bag here. Chelsea Wolfe. I didn't know about Chelsea before. She's an alternate on BMX freestyle. She graduated in 2016, and BMX is a new event in the Olympics. We've had sort of extreme-ish sports in the Winter Olympics for a long time now. I remember Nagano in 1998. They piloted snowboarding, and then it really took off, I think, in 2002 in Salt Lake City. But the Summer Olympics has always been resistant to things like skateboarding and BMX and surfing. Well, those things are part of the Olympic program now for the first time this year. So Chelsea Wolfe will be an alternate on the BMX side. So what's her resume look like right now?
So the BMX tournament, I believe, is going, from what I've researched, is going to be happening on July 30th and July 31st. That is going to be at 10:20 p.m. our time. So of course, she is an alternate, so there is a distinct possibility that she will not be appearing. But on the off chance that she does, then that will certainly be something to watch. So obviously, you don't want to wish ill will on anybody, but it's nice to see that Chelsea Wolfe is going to be waiting in the wings and will be able to step in if things end up happening, especially now where COVID-19 has become a major issue at the games.
Right. All right. There are a couple other people that we wanted to talk about as well. And the Paralympics actually start after the Summer Olympics that we're seeing right now. And UCF has an athlete competing in the para triathlon. That's Kyle Kuhn, a 2013 graduate. What do we know about him?
So I looked up, and Kyle, and that will be in late August. So basically, the notes that I have are focusing on the Olympics, because the Olympics are one thing and the Paralympics are another. But I'm glad to see that we have a Paralympian night, and I'm excited for when we cover him. That's still about a month out. So I'm sure that on this podcast we'll be able to keep you viewers up to date on these Olympians and how they're doing, and so we'll definitely be crossing that bridge when we get to it.
All right, and then one last one. Obviously, the officials who are people forget about how the officials are part. It's a real honor if you're an official in a sport to be asked to go to the Olympics. And UCF has one basketball official, a guy who we've known for a long time. I remember we were students together. He refereed a bunch of intramural games back as part of UCF intramural sports back when I was a student. And we've seen him now move his way up to college, and he's even reffed in the NBA. Steve Anderson, who graduated as an undergrad in 2005, got his master's from UCF in 2007. He's going to be refereeing men's basketball.
That he is. The men's basketball tournament runs from July 25th to August 7th. I don't really know exactly which games he would be refereeing in that time span, but I'm sure that information will be out there somewhere. And if not, and even then, the basketball tournament's always fun to watch. So even if Mr. Anderson isn't refereeing, that's definitely always something good to watch. So
all right,
glad to see that we have a Knight representing us on the officiating side.
All right, so that's 7 nights that we'll be taking a look at it. And of course, Bryson, you'll be following them throughout the Olympiad, the 32nd Summer Olympiad in Tokyo, Japan, delayed by a year, but here we are, and the opening ceremonies begin on Friday. One of the sports that is making its return to the Olympics, two of the sports actually, are baseball and softball, and that gives us a good segue into some UCF baseball news, Bryson, which you have also been following fairly closely. We had 3 UCF Knights go in the MLB Draft. To this point, obviously we had Josh Crouch go to the Detroit Tigers, Jack Sinclair to the Washington Nationals, but Colton Gordon got selected by the Houston Astros, even despite the fact that he was that he suffered a torn ligament in his elbow and had to undergo Tommy John surgery, and is still recovering from that. He signed on with, or he was drafted and actually signed on with the Houston Astros. Let me just ask you about those three guys in general. Before we get to an interview with Colton that you and Eric Lopez just did. How much of a surprise was it that UCF got three guys drafted, or was it really not a surprise at all?
Well, one thing that Coach Lovelady did that I definitely would give him credit for is right after the final game of the season in the American Athletic Conference tournament, he got to answer some questions about the possibility of some players getting drafted. He talked about Colton. He talked about Jack. He talked about Crouch. He talked about Jeffrey. He talked about basically everybody that that entered themselves into the draft. I mentioned this with Eric last week, but looking at these three specific players, Colton Gordon, for one, he is just a pitching talent. Even with his injury, if he's able to rebound, then it's still a major improvement. He led the team in strikeouts even when he missed the last month of the year. He still led the team in strikeouts. So and then even Coach Lovelady himself said that he was expecting him to go in the 6th round pre-injury, but even post-injury, he said that he predicted that Colton Gordon would be selected in the top 10 rounds, and that would prove to be prophetic as he went in the 8th round to the Astros. So it's going to depend on how well he's rehabbing. I mean, when we talked to him, he said that he's getting some range of motion back in there, and so it's going to probably be all about just rehabbing that elbow back. And as many that follow baseball should know, Tommy John surgery usually takes about a year to a year and a half to rehab. So so the Astros are certainly placing their faith in Colton to rehab and get back to the level that we saw him at UCF. But if he does, then I think he's definitely going to make a mark in the show as far as Colton goes.
All right, so without further ado, let's get to the interview that you and Eric Lopez conducted with newly minted Houston Astro pitcher Colton Gordon.
How are you doing? You've been rehabbing that UCL for a couple months now, so how's that going for you?
Yeah, so everything's going really well. I was really fortunate. UCF has supported me so much ever since I got there, and the UCL was obviously fortunate, but body feels great. Out of the cast, out of the brace, and got full range of motion back. So that's great, and feeling really good, feeling strong, and starting to get in the gym again, and excited to keep the progress going.
So, Cole, what has this been like for you? Did you expect to get drafted? Take us through this process leading into this draft, and then that moment where you find your name gets called there, and you're part of the Houston Astros in the 8th round.
Yeah. So it was. It's been quite the journey. Quite the little bit of a roller coaster here the past 4 months, and so was really excited about the year I was having, and it was going really well, and was really excited. And the unfortunate thing happened with my injury, and it kind of went, wow, like what now? What's going to happen? And a lot of questions, a lot of unknowns, and kind of there was a thought, I could get drafted. I could get drafted later. There was really no certain answer. So leading into the draft, there was a little bit of expectation, but there was not a set expectation. So when I got my name called and I was with my family, man, it was so exciting. It was, it's a dream come true, but it's the first step of many that I want to take to become a Major League Baseball player. So this is just the start.
How many teams did you get to talk to leading into the process? Did you get a sense of things, what people thought of you? And what did the Astros tell you once they drafted you?
They, So leading into the process after I got hurt, there was a good amount of teams that reached out, and, really I appreciated the fact they reached out and just said, hey man, we're sorry to hear about your injury. And that was kind of the first part. And then to go on from there, it was some interest with a handful of teams, and then when I got the call on draft day that the Astros were going to take me the next couple of picks, it was, we're so happy to have you. We're excited to get you in here, get you healthy, and get to work. And I was so happy that they got me, and I'm so happy to be here and get better and get healthy with them.
So you were one of 3 UCF players to get drafted in the draft. What was just your reaction to Crouch and Sinclair being drafted, especially since you've been on the same starting rotation with Sinclair?
Expected. I know that might be very blunt and simple, but man, Jackson Sinclair and Crouch, they're so special in their own right. I mean Jackson Sinclair, that kid's unbelievable. He's such a good athlete, and the ability he has to throw as hard as he does so effortlessly is, he's going to go far in this game as well. He's just getting started. And Crouch, on the other hand, he's probably one of the best defensive catchers that's ever caught me in my whole life, if not the best one. So again, they got so much potential, and it's just the beginning. So we're all really excited.
What was Coach Lovelady was excited on social media, and he even told us after the conference championship game, he expected you to be drafted in the first 10 rounds, which we were like, whoa. So he clearly had confidence that this would end up working out for you. What was the interaction with Coach Lovelady after that, and what does that say that he had the confidence in you even with the setback?
Yeah, it feels great that he had the confidence in me about that, and then and he's had that since that confidence instilled in me since I got there, and that's part of why I loved being there is the sense of like, man, go get it today, go take the ball, like let's go, like we're gonna kind of ride or die with you, and having that support from the coaching staff and him and Coach Adi, and even the strength room coach Jeremy Fraden, and the people, the list goes on and on about the what makes the program what it is, but the confidence starts with Coach Lovelady, but also trickles down to everybody else that was there. So, it was so exciting, and it was awesome to share that moment with him as well.
So what's the next steps for you and the Astros? What have they told you? What's the next steps for you? What do you have to do now? Because obviously you still are kind of rehabbing. How is, from your injury and all that. So what's the process going to be like here now moving forward?
So, yeah. So now I'm actually in Palm Beach right now. I'm down here, which is where their spring training is, and I'll be here probably until the end of the year almost. Then they're going to take over my rehab where I left off, basically, and that's getting in the weight room and starting to build back up my strength and get stronger than I ever have been, and then a couple months start throwing in my throwing program, and then build back up into going to spring training next year. Hopefully start to get off the mound a little bit and just continue that process back to being, even better than I was before. So
how do you think that having your injury impacted your draft stock? Coach Lovelady said in the same press conference where he said you would go in the first 10 rounds, he said like even your injury maybe what caused you to go from like a 6th round pick to somewhere between 6 and 10. So how did that your injury impact your draft stock from your point of view?
I really don't know, and that goes back to part of the not knowing what to expect in the draft. I'm sure it didn't help with some teams. I'm sure with other teams it was less of a factor. Look, I'm going to work my tail off down here and get stronger and get better. And the surgery was a very successful surgery, and I know that I'm going to be back better. So, that's kind of been the mindset ever since it happened. And as far as how the draft turned out, I'm just happy to be a Houston Astros and be down here with such a great organization.
Now flashing back a little bit because your torn UCL ended up coming up right before the regular season East Carolina series, but in the the preview that was put on the UCF Athletics website before, you were penciled in to start. So one can assume that the injury occurred very shortly before that series, and we never really got any word about how that happened. Are you able to take us through like what exactly happened that day, when it happened, and that kind of thing?
Yeah, so there's no no real exact time that it happened. I'm pretty sure it happened during my last start, during that USF game. And then that next week, it was just, that next day I threw and I knew something was going on and what that was. And that next week was just a grind in the training room, recovery, doing everything I could to try to pitch again, even if it wasn't going to be that Friday, that weekend at ECU. And when I knew that wasn't going to happen, I probably found that out. I found that out pre-game on Friday that wasn't going to happen that weekend. And then that next week I got the MRI and went from there. And I found out the news, and then kind of the views on everything kind of changed, and was like, okay, if this is what it is, this sucks. It's and beyond it sucking for me, it sucks for the team. Like this past year, our team, we had the year we had, but our expectation was to kind of shock the world. I mean, look, our program's on the up and up, and the guys we had in that locker room, man, we had the opportunity to do something unbelievable. And part of what was so unfortunate was obviously us not being able to do, the goals we set out to do, but, they're going to be headed in the right direction for years to come for sure. So it's really exciting.
Now, you had the injury, but you stayed with the team, and other guys even talked about how you were still supportive of them. You were in the dugout. You talk about that mindset, because obviously that's a brutal news to get. It could have been easy to just say, man, woe is me, and just kind of, separate yourself from the team. But you didn't do that. You helped the other guys. You were still supportive. Just take me through that process and how you helped the guys, because they talked about they helped you, guys like Patterson and others. They talked about how you helped them through the rest of the year and into that conference tournament run.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I take pride in being one of the leaders on that team, but more importantly, like we got after it every day with those guys, and like I didn't want to go anywhere. I mean, that's where I wanted to be. Like those guys, not only are they good people, they're fun. Like they grind, like they get after it. Hunter Patterson, that goes in every day and finds a way to get better, and like it's fun to do that. Like if you're around a bunch of guys that are pulling in the same direction, it makes it easy. And that's what I want to be as a person too. I want to be the guy that not only hopefully leads the team on the field, right, and winning, but also off the field, kind of leading by example. And that's just one way that I try to do that and be around. And again, there was no other place I'd rather be than out there kind of cheering those guys on and being in that atmosphere.
So being in that position, being around everybody in the dugout for the second half of the season, obviously with you leaving in the MLB Draft and AJ Jones graduating, that leaves some spots open in the pitching rotation. So from your point of view, who are the young pitchers, because there are a lot of young pitchers on the team, who's really stuck out to you?
Yeah, I mean, Patterson will take some lead next year and take over a lot of responsibilities. But man, the freshmen we had this past year, and I know there's freshmen coming in, there'll be some new faces on the team, I'm sure. But I mean, Patterson will take a lot of responsibilities. Ben Vespi is a guy that's going to be unbelievable. Nick Vieira is going to continue to grow. Zach Bennett. I think even Zach Hunsinger is a guy that's been there a while. Will definitely get some more responsibilities. And again, like UCF has a bright future. Like it's, you just can't argue with the coaching staff and the support staff around them. Like they go in every day and find a way to get you better. And you're in a place that is constantly like moving forward and finding ways to get everybody involved and progress in a positive way. So they're on the up and up, no matter what way you look at it. So it's exciting.
So you mentioned Hunter Patterson, and he started out the season and had a little bit of a stumble, went to the bullpen, ended up regaining his stuff there, and then after you get hurt, or a couple weeks after you get hurt, he comes back into the rotation and takes over your game one slot. What was it like watching Patterson go through what he's gone through this season? Yeah,
it's great for him. Look, like baseball's so hard. It's so tough, and not every day you're gonna have a great day. But I think part of what was so cool to watch about him was kind of went the reliever role. I think learned a lot about himself. Made some adjustments on the mound, and then was able to come back out at the end of the year and show those adjustments he made, even maybe some maturity, some growing that he had to do throughout the year. And I think he knows, as long as everybody else knows, the expectations for him to go out there and continue to do that this year. And it's exciting. I mean, it's awesome. So I'm definitely looking forward to seeing him out there again this upcoming year.
Let's talk about your career at UCF, because you had a heck of a run. The two starts I think a lot of Knights fans will remember is your start at Auburn, where you kind of helped start them sweeping Auburn in 2020, and obviously the great year that you were having in 2020. And then this past year at Ole Miss, they were number 1 at the time, and you get the win, and that helped win the series 2 out of 3. When you think back to your career at UCF, what pops into your mind? Is it those two starts in particular?
Yeah, it's so much. I mean, listen, those two starts were awesome, and absolutely they'll be in there without a doubt. But it's stuff off the field. It's being with the guys off the field, being with the guys on the field, and being able to, if those two starts is a way to push the program forward and kind of leave a mark, yeah, absolutely. And it was a blast, and it was so exciting. But what I remember most is just the guys that I was with, and kind of again the way we pushed to get better, but also to push the program to be in a more prominent spot. So that's what's really exciting about it.
So speaking of Eric's mentioning last season, you ended, even though your season ended weeks early for you because of the injury, you actually led the team in strikeouts with 72, with the only player even within 10 of that is Hunter Patterson. What was it? Even though you didn't exactly know at the time it was your last game at USF, what was it like to pitch this season, putting up numbers like that?
Yeah, it was exciting. It's what you want to do. It's what you work for. It's the pitching coach, Coach Adi, helped tremendously. Helped me grow as a pitcher there, as a person on and off the mound. And again, it's what you work for. It's what you put in the time for every day, is to be able to go out and lead the team on the field like that, and hopefully win a lot of games. And it's exciting that a lot of those young guys are going to have more responsibilities this upcoming year, and to see them take that over as well.
What got you to come to UCF? And I remember Coach Lovelady on media availabilities from the day you walked in. He had the confidence in you right from day one. So you clearly must have hit a bond there. But take us through your journey, how you ended up at UCF.
Yeah, so I was at Hillsborough Community College. I went to Florida out of high school. I went to junior college, and then UCF ended up being a spot where it was perfect for me. It was a place that I knew that if I went in and I worked hard every day, I could pitch and have the role potentially that I had, as long as I went in there and with an open mind learned and got better. And then from there, just grew a bond with the coaching staff, the players, and it was just getting better every day. And I think that paid off in so many aspects. And I know it's really as simple as that. It's just, making a lot of friends with the people you're around and memories, but also just finding a way to get better every day. That was kind of the goal, whether it was something really little or something really big. It was something every day to push forward, whether it was myself, the team, a group of guys. It was always, how do we get better today? How do we, figure this out? So that's how I ended up there. So when I left Hillsborough, was that kind of mantra that I just, spoke about was kind of told to me, kind of sold to me. And that was something I wanted to be around. I wanted to be around a place where, man, you should come in and, work on different things mechanically, pitching, throwing, whatever it was with baseball. And to be able to do that and grind and have a coaching staff that was willing to work with you nonstop was, obviously someplace I wanted to be. And being close to home as well was a huge factor. But those were the main reasons.
Colton, you also are leading behind a team who is also having a little bit of holes to fill offensively now, with Jordan Rathbone graduating and of course Josh Crouch going in the MLB draft. Like I asked before when I asked who stuck out with the pitchers, pitchers, who sticks out to you offensively or in the field?
Yeah, so in the field, offensively, Alex Freeland, again, he's unbelievable. That kid's stuff. Roommates who are going to still be there. Look, Nick Romano and Tom Dawson are gonna come back and have a really special year and be a kind of a veteran presence in the lineup, which is super exciting and much needed. And I think, there's going to be guys that stand out too, some new faces like I said before on the mound. Same thing in the lineup. There's going to be some new guys that step up, and that's really exciting as well. So, they're moving in the right direction, and they're going to have a great year next year.
Yeah, Freeland's kind of a freak. I mean, for what he accomplished is just in his first year. I mean, what was it like, having him behind you there? Were you even blown away from what he can do considering his young age?
Yes, absolutely. But no, because we're able to see it every day. And that's kind of the cool part about it is you kind of, after you see it every day for a while, you're like, all right, like, that's unbelievable, but like, let's do it. Like, that's awesome. And it also sets an expectation for him and the guys around him. Look, you're really good. That's awesome. But every day, like, that's what you got to be. So, it was really impressive. Super proud of him, and he knows he's got a bright future and a long way to go. So, it'll be exciting to see what he brings to the table in the next couple of years.
Couple last questions before we let you go. Have you reached out to like a Hankinson or Trevor Holloway or just kind of, or anybody else that's probably already up in the, kind of what's it like in pro ball? What should I look forward to type of thing?
Yeah, for sure. And it was cool because I got to talk to them a little bit during the year as well, even before this process kind of happened, and, checking in on them and seeing, what's going on, like, what have they been up to? It's like you're saying, the experiences. So they've given me a little insight. So that's super cool and definitely helped a lot, coming down here this past couple of weeks.
I know you mentioned that, we talked earlier about the Auburn and the Ole Miss game. If I forced you to pick one of those two which one do you like better? Which one's your preference there?
Wow.
Or do you have, unless you want to go off the board?
I don't know. I like both. I like the fact that we won. Like, I like the fact that we swept Auburn, but I like the fact that we won both of those series. And I was glad I was able to set the tone. And that's what I want going forward is guys to be able to set the tone. And look, we can compete with anybody. We're really good, like top to bottom. And man, it was exciting to be able to do that. But there were so many starts that I remember that were just good days and really fun. So,
well, a lot of Knight fans are going to remember you when we look back years from now and your name comes up on campus. What do you want people to say about you as your legacy at UCF?
Man, it's a great question. I want to be, my legacy at UCF. I want it to be a couple things. I want to be a great pitcher. I want to be, a great person, a great teammate, but a great leader as well. Someone that took the program and hopefully left my mark is what we talk about all the time, leaving your mark on leaving a legacy. So something along those lines, but also a great pitcher, a great leader, but a guy that was a team guy. Like, I've always been a team guy, and that's kind of my thing. I love it. I love competing with guys and getting after it and a winner, like a winner. And that's kind of it, like a winner, team guy, and just getting after it every day, a hard worker. Like every day I showed up, my goal was to find a way to get better, even if it was something little, just, again, keep pushing forward. So that's what I want to leave behind.
Well, you left a lot of great memories. A lot of Knight fans really enjoyed watching you, and we were excited when we saw your name get called up in the big leagues there and the Astros, and we're going to be following you closely, man. Congrats on that. Wish you the best of luck, and appreciate you taking time from the busy schedule, but congrats, man.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you guys so much as well. Appreciate it.
All right. Thanks to Colton. Thanks to Eric. And thank you, Bryson, for for conducting that interview for us with Colton. Congratulations to him.
An honor to talk to him.
Yeah. And obviously we wish him the best with his rehab. I know that they're going to give him a good shot. It shows you the faith that the Astros have in him, that even despite the injury, they drafted him and paid him quite a bit of money too, right, in terms of his bonus money.
Yes, it definitely if I recall correctly, it was lower than what his value, the pick itself is normally valued at. But hey, if you're a college kid, especially since we only just got NIL rights, so if you're a college kid now, then you how can you turn down a kind of money like that?
Yeah. Let's talk about the other two guys, Jack Sinclair and Josh Crouch, real quick. And I want to start with Sinclair because he also signed on. He got his bonus money too from the Washington Nationals. And I think the Nationals saw in him, what they had in 2020 before the pandemic, where he was lights out of the pen. It was a rougher time for him this past season as a starter, although he did have some really good moments. What is the outlook for Sinclair now with the Washington Nationals, do you think?
Well, Jack Sinclair is very interesting. So, based off of what I've seen of him with last season, I think that what might have led to Sinclair getting the attention of the Nationals, because before Colton Gordon got hurt, Jack Sinclair was actually not having the best season. Before Colton Gordon tore his UCL, Sinclair was 1-4 and pitching a 5.97 ERA at the time. However, in his final 6 games after Colton's injury, he completely turned his season around. He went 4-1 and pitched a 3.45 ERA in that final stretch of 6 games. So I think that turnaround that he did really saved him as far as being selected in the MLB draft. And so, obviously he's not Colton Gordon. Colton Gordon but I think that if Sinclair is able to maintain the consistency that he did in those final 6 games in that final month of the season where he really needed to step up and when Colton Gordon got hurt, then I could definitely see a solid MLB career out of him as well. I will definitely be watching his journey to the show with great interest.
All right. And then Josh Crouch in particular, I think that when he was picked, it really felt like kind of a blow to UCF because he was so instrumental in how far this team got and how close they got to the NCAA tournament. His bat was amazing. He was phenomenal behind the plate. Obviously, congratulations to him on the Detroit Tigers. Now, we haven't gotten any notification whether or not he's actually signed with the Tigers, but you were telling me earlier you think it's pretty much it's in the bag that he's going to go. And where does that leave UCF in terms of the catcher position?
Well, so I said that last week because I was basically, like I said earlier today, as a college kid, and you get that money, and we're not factoring in NIL because that only just happened. And, you can't really turn down the kind of pro money that you'd be able to get. If you're able to get drafted, then for sure, like I completely wouldn't fault you if you left. And Crouch had a massive breakout. I think if I'm not misremembering, I believe he won the Banny or was nominated or won the Banny for Breakout Player of the Year. I think he was either nominated or won, but nominated. He was nominated. Okay, yeah, I'm trying to remember that, but there was a reason why he was nominated for that award, because he could just completely came out of nowhere, and his bat was, like you said, the bat was extremely instrumental in leading the team. He was right behind Jordan Rathbone for the home run, for the team lead in home runs, and he plays catcher. He managed to make that switch to catcher over the course of his college career, and I mean, pro teams took notice, and who can fault them? I think that I'm very glad that he was able to make such a great turnaround and be able to get drafted like he has. Unfortunately, that does leave UCF in a little bit of a precarious position when it comes to catcher. As far as bats go, I'm not too worried about bats because I think there are some bats at UCF that are likely to stay, that should be able to fill the void, such as the freshman phenom Alex Freeland. You got Ben McCabe, and speaking of McCabe, I touched on this with Eric Lopez last week. Ben McCabe, he played a lot of first base this season, but the season before that, he's a catcher. That's where he started. And so with Josh Crouch's departure and Nick Romano, who plays first base, and his resurgence, in the American Athletic Conference tournament. And I have to imagine that he'll continue to build on that during the offseason and fall ball. So if Nick Romano comes back and plays first base, then we could maybe see Ben McCabe come back and return to play catcher. Now, obviously, this is just based on, on unknown quantities at this point. So, things can change with the transfer portal, which we'll bring up in a second, and new freshmen coming in. But just based off of the known quantities that we have right now, I think we'll be able to I guess not completely fill the void, but I think that Crouch's bat will be like less of a blow than I think a lot of people think it will.
All right, so we'll be keeping an eye on that, and then also there's going to be. We did see that there was one transfer coming in from the University of Pittsburgh. Is that right?
Yes, yes, he said so on his Twitter. It is Riley Walsh. He is a local product originally from Lake Brantley, and he's making his way back to Central Florida. I have his stats over here. He managed to play start in 19 games for Pittsburgh, played in 23. He hit had a 179 batting average, so his bat isn't exactly there, but his fielding percentage is .994 from last time. And so while I do think that if you put Riley Walsh against, say, Ben McCabe, I would predict that Ben McCabe would win that out. But I wouldn't be surprised if Riley Walsh would be the backup, although obviously unless a freshman comes in and performs very well in fall ball. We also actually have another transfer coming in. My source told me that Connor Stain, a pitcher from Maryland, is going to be coming to UCF as well. So he last season for Maryland, he started in 6 games, pitched 34.2 innings. It went 0-3, 6.46 ERA. So not exactly the best of statistics in that category, but however, he does bring some starting pitching experience to a UCF team that I've said before that starting pitching had been their Achilles heel last season. And so I think if our pitching coaches will be able to work with him and be able to help him improve. He was a sophomore, so he'll be coming in as a junior. I think he'll have some time to develop, and I think he could be very interesting to see how he comes in.
All right. So there's our update on UCF baseball. We got a lot.
We also have though the other side of the transfer portal.
That's right. Because you wanted to talk about that too. There are guys who are in the transfer portal right now. Now, it doesn't mean that they're going anywhere.
Right. Exactly.
But
they are
some noteworthy names.
They are looking. So let's go ahead and just get the ones out of the way that not many people might know, just so that way we know the names are there. So infielder Matt Archer, left-handed pitcher Nick Gotia, and left-handed pitcher Keegan Pulford Thorpe. So those guys are both leaving, and I can easily see why they would. The left-handed pitching market in UCF is stacked right now. The bullpen really stacked right now. It makes sense why they would want to seek opportunities elsewhere. And then as far as the infield goes, I think everyone's pretty cemented with Andrew Braid at third, Alex Freeland at short, either John Montes or Tom Josten at second. So
now Archer had that injury too that he suffered in that dog pile on second base after that one walk-off hit that they had. So
that as well. So there's that. Now this one is many people might not know this name, but I do want to bring it up because it was important to something we discussed earlier. Catcher Matthew Menendez. So I mentioned early on last week's show that Matthew Menendez might be a interesting player to look at as far as looking at what the catching depth chart for UCF is going to look like looking forward. And so to see him in the transfer portal, I think is very interesting. And so we'll see how that works out, because if he leaves, then obviously our catching depth chart might be a little bit shallower than we would have thought prior. But again, doesn't necessarily mean he's leaving. It just means he might possibly leave. So there's that. But the two biggest names that were in the transfer portal, my source tells me, are starting pitcher Kenny Serwa and closer David Litchfield. So I want to start with Surwa because we were talking about starting pitching earlier. I mentioned before in last week's show when we were talking about, how the starting pitching rotation is going to go moving forward. And I mentioned that Surwa was a part of my prediction of who was going to be in the starting rotation last year because he got another season of eligibility. Well, now with the revelation from that he is now in the transfer portal, that changes things a little bit. So with the possibility of him leaving, that basically means that the starting rotation is from last season, that last season pretty much is wiped almost clean. The only starters that would be returning this season from last season are Hunter Patterson and Zach Hunsaker. That's it. AJ Jones graduated. Colton Gordon got drafted.
And AJ Jones has been playing some independent ball and actually got off to a good start too, didn't he?
That he has. And the thing is that they weren't mainline starters the entire season. Zach Hunsaker made a lot of his starts during the stopgap between when Colton Gordon got injured and between when Hunter Patterson came up and took over that spot in the starting rotation. And then we talked about Hunter Patterson and how he started the season in the rotation, ran into some issues, went to the bullpen, worked on his stuff, came back after Colton Gordon got hurt and managed to just completely blow up the competition. Great resurgence out of him, great improvement from him. And I'm very excited to see what Hunter Patterson could be able to do as the head of the rotation. But aside from Patterson, there really isn't that much of a sure quality. Zach Hunsaker kind of was pulled back from starting duties but near the end of the season. So who knows who's to say if he's going to be a sure bet to be in the starting rotation. We could see the transfer portal play a factor. Like I said, we talked about Connor Stain, so we could possibly see that. We could have a freshman come in and just completely blow our minds in fall ball. Or when me and Eric talked to Colton Gordon, as you heard before, we talked about what kind of pitchers stand out to you. And one of the pitchers that he mentioned was Ben Vespi. And I said last week's show with Eric that considering Ben Vespi's extended relief appearances where he's made 4 or 5 inning appearances, I think that he could be a relief pitcher that could easily be stretched out into a starter. So while, it's a little bit, basically the sky's the limit basically with the UCF starting rotation right now. I said earlier in the year that the starting rotation has been the Achilles heel for UCF, and not in the fault of their own. Colton Gordon got hurt, Hunter Patterson ran into some issues, and I think had those two both been healthy and at the top of their game, we would have managed to go farther. But in the end, what happened. But now we are in a position where the slate is wiped almost clean. Hunter Patterson is in a really great position right now. And if UCF can get some arms in there to support him, then I think they can turn starting rotation into a very good strength, especially with all these great young pitchers that we've been having right now. And then speaking of young pitchers, David Litchfield. So my source tells me that David Litchfield is looking to transfer to an SEC or an ACC school. And so then the question becomes, okay, who's the next guy up for that? So Colton Gordon said that Zach Bennett was a pitcher that stuck out to him, and considering he also was given some save opportunities, I think he could very well be the next guy up when it comes to closing. But again, like we said before, just because these guys are in the transfer portal does not mean that they are automatically going to leave. So this is something that we'll definitely be keeping a pulse on as the summer turns into fall.
All right, Bryson Turner. Thanks for the breakdown on the Olympics and baseball, man. Keeping an eye on that transfer portal, on the draft. Where can people find you?
My Twitter is @it's Bryson Turner. The B and T are capitalized.
All right, Bryson. Thank you so much. When we come back, Drew is going to join me once again. We're going to answer some listener questions via Twitter. UCF_Banneret on Twitter when we return. This is the Black Gold Banneret Podcast. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Jeff and Drew back with you here. We're going to talk. We're going to answer some of your questions via Twitter. UCF_Banneret on Twitter is where you want to send those questions. We've done this 3 weeks in a row, Drew, and I'm really proud of us. I just want to say that.
It's a great thing to do. Keep up the good work.
Yes, and thanks to those of you who were sending in questions. We got some quick ones here, so let's go ahead and
And we got
get
more
right
people involved.
More people involved, that's right. And of course, I mean, lots of news to ask about, right? So Jeff_Sharon on Twitter, Statboy Drew on Twitter as well if you want to send us questions. And here we go. Our friend Corey Eskenazi, who has been sending us questions every week. Corey, thank you. Thank you for your loyalty and your participation. We appreciate you. Outside of football and men's basketball, which sport figures to gain the most? Which UCF sport figures to gain the most through conference realignment? And again, this is assuming conference realignment happens, which again, Drew, you and I both don't think it's going to happen.
Right.
But let's
assume it does.
Let's hop on the Speculatron and go for a ride here. Let's say, all right, football, men's basketball. Which sport figures to gain the most through conference realignment? Go.
I'm gonna go with baseball.
Okay. Why?
You're joining up with Texas programs that have all had a lot of success, and when you've got good teams, you work to be as good as those good teams, if not better. So I think it would be a step up and force the program to find a way to put out a better product. I mean, you're in Florida, you should be able to put out a good product.
You know what I'm going to say.
Women's basketball.
Volleyball, baby. And I'll tell you why. Aside from the Pac-12, which owns college volleyball essentially, right with them are the Big Ten and the Big 12. All right. Texas is a major power in volleyball. Oklahoma is a power in volleyball. So that becomes, and even if those teams go away, you still have a lot of schools out there. Baylor has been very good at volleyball over the years. So I think volleyball would get a huge boost being in the Big 12, from both a recruiting perspective and a competition perspective. Sports Bliss with Rob and Chris, our podcast compatriots. Money aside, would UCF have an easier or harder path to a national championship with a move to the Big 12?
Oh, harder by far.
Why do you say that?
It goes, in every, with the CFP expansion, top 6 conference champions. Mm-hmm. And then in all other sports, conference championship gets you into, the postseason, win and move on. The Big 12, top to bottom, is a better conference. I mean, say what you want. It's a better conference. And of course, you want to be the best, you got to beat the best. But if you want a chance at a national championship, you can backdoor your way by just winning your conference. I mean, UCF did it for many years in the Atlantic Sun. You win a low major, you still get in the postseason. So I think as far as an easier path would be to stay in the American, but I don't think the program would evolve to become as good of a national contender in the American versus the Big 12.
I'm assuming that they're thinking Texas and Oklahoma are gone. So
I'm going to remain. Let's go that, and I'm going to keep the same answer.
All right.
American will be an easier challenge because as you take out Kansas, that 7 versus the other 7 of the American, not including Houston and not including Cincinnati and not including UCF, and you can even say Memphis in there as well. That bottom 7 versus the remaining 7. No, the Big 12 is a better conference.
You know what I would say? I would say with if you're comparing the American as it is now to a Big 12 with Cincinnati or something like that, but without Texas and Oklahoma, I would actually say it's a draw. I don't think that
we disagree on that one.
We disagree on that one, but I would say it's a draw because you're going to be playing a lot of teams that. I mean, what's the cliche about the Big 12? All offense, no defense, right?
Well, I mean, it would have been perfect for a Josh Heupel team.
Could you imagine? By the way, if that happened and
the scoreboard would break.
Oh my god. Corey Eskenazi's back with another question. Are us UCF fans going to get our hearts broken with all this potential conference realignment
Absolutely.
talk? Corey, yes.
Absolutely.
That's a given. Ladarius Brown, one of my students from Full Sail. What's up, Ladarius? Does UCF have to move to a Power 5 conference to contend for a national championship?
No.
Because if the 12-team playoff goes through, and that's the golden goose. I think that everyone forgets that. The 12-team playoff is the thing that UCF needs to happen. It's not a move to another conference, okay? If you get the 12-team playoff, and especially if Eric Lopez always talks about criteria, if the criteria is automatic berths for the top 6 conference champions, you're in. Take your shot, all right? Then you don't have to go anywhere. Now, because people, and that's the frame of when you're talking about national championships. Now, if you're talking about television revenue, well, as we talked about in the first segment, what is the value of the teams in the Big 12 without Texas and Oklahoma that they can put on the schedule? It's not nearly as much as it is currently in the Big 12 with Texas and Oklahoma, right? So how much more is it than the American? I mean, I don't think it's a lot. Do you?
I mean, it's, I think there would still be a step up, but remember, there was always this not instability, but there was always this kind of tension in the American of looking for that next opportunity. Well, if the Big 12 fizzles and dies out, it actually makes
guess who becomes a Power 5 league.
Well, then it just becomes Power 4, but that's neither here nor there. But the truth is, it will actually help stabilize the American, because it's really gonna clamp down on realignment, because SEC is going to do their thing, ACC is going to do their, Big Ten is going to do their thing, and then they're going to be done. There's not going to be movement at that point. There's going to be nowhere to move.
Yeah.
So it really depends on how the league handles losing, those 2 schools. If they look to recruit and try to rebuild, then, UCF, Cincinnati, Houston, and insert 4th team here probably want to, talk to each other quite a bit and see if they want to team up on it. But if it fizzles, stay home.
Yeah. Sansa 520. Honestly, what do you think it would take to join a bigger conference, and when do you see that happening?
I don't.
And by the way, bigger conference? Bigger in terms of what? Opportunity to win a national championship? With a 12-team playoff, you're already there. If you're talking about a bigger conference in terms of revenue, there is no opportunity. And
let's be honest.
And I've said this before.
The ACC's not calling.
No, the ACC's not calling. The SEC sure isn't calling. So the smart thing for UCF would be to play the long game, stay in the American, see what happens with the Big 12 in the future, and then take your chances competition-wise by winning the conference, being successful in all sports, and getting to the playoff. And then take your chances there. Right?
If you remember, before UCF got invited to the Big East, it was always proud members of Conference USA.
Mm-hmm.
Proud members of it was a broken record. Well, proud members of the American. That's probably not going to change anytime soon.
Yeah.
So maybe I'm setting my expectations low, because like previous question,
you too,
I don't want my heart broken.
I know. It's like we said before, we've been there so many times with this. And UCF was trying for...
We're old.
For the better part of 15 years to get to the Big East Conference.
Oh, it's
and then
longer
we finally
than that.
got into it, and the Big East ceased to be the Big East.
I guess it started back in the late 90s.
Yeah.
With Steve Sloan trying to push for the Big East, and it just went nowhere. And then 2003, the big shift,
mm-hmm.
and UCF was on a colossal dismantling of their football program at that time. So to be invited as a football only member made absolutely no sense, and they played themselves, out of any argument that could be made. And it's been catch up ever since.
Yeah. And we're finally caught up. Right?
Well, I mean, we got UCF to that part And then
we're in as good a spot right
the
now
bladder
as
broke
we
underneath
ever
and fell down.
We're in as good a spot right now as we ever could have been. And the reason why you know that is look where South Florida is. Right? They caught the breaks. They got into the Big East in 2000 and whatever. What was it?
2005.
2005.
That was their first.
They were in Conference USA prior to that.
Correct.
They got into Conference USA when we were still an independent and then in the MAC. They got into the Big East when we got into Conference USA. Now we're both on an even playing field. We're everything reversed. I don't know where UCF would be otherwise. Not because I don't think that other schools wouldn't have seen, or not because I don't think other. I'm sorry, Drew. Not because I don't think other conferences wouldn't have seen the value in UCF. I just think that the entire situation would still be the same.
Well, yeah, but you have a great speculative piece on what if UCF joined Conference USA in the mid-90s.
Oh, yeah, that would have been fun. That would have been a blast.
UCF become like the power broker at that point.
Yeah. Speculation for UCF's future if Oklahoma and Texas lead the Big 12. That's from UCF Realist.
I'm going to be a realist. I don't expect anything.
Yeah, I honestly don't either. I don't. Sometimes the smart move is to do nothing.
I'm going to throw a wet blanket on that.
You hear that, Trace?
That's for you, buddy.
Yeah. Bottom line is there are a lot of parts that have to start moving before UCF's part can move at all. This is a giant traffic jam. And I don't see anything. I don't see anything happening with this. Now, conditions may change. This is why I tell fans this all the time. You got to trust the administration. You got to trust Terry Mohajir, and you got to trust President Cartwright. They've been well briefed on all of this stuff.
Oh, they know everything that's going on.
They know everything.
They know more.
And it comes back. I know this is a cliche, but I hear this. Those who know don't speak, and those who speak don't know.
Boy,
right?
What's that make us?
Like I said, we're hopping on the speculatron. We kind of know some things, but yeah, I think we got to sit back and wait. I think this could be one giant rope-a-dope by Texas and Oklahoma to grab some headlines, and for a week or two,
and pressure the TV partners
and extort ESPN and or Fox to give them a larger share of the pie at the expense of everyone else in that league, by the way, to get them onto a more even financial footing with schools in the SEC who are making $58 million a year, each of them, from that TV contract. Texas and Oklahoma are making about 40 to 45. So, I mean, there you go.
Numbers don't lie.
Yeah. Numbers don't lie. Get at that Scrooge McDuck meme where he's diving into the money bin and swimming in the coins.
That sounds painful.
Jim Hadaway, what's the fastest land animal? And he linked me to a clip from the movie. I think it's the movie Airplane. Yeah, it's. I told him it was a human riding in the Bloodhound LSR, which is the record-setting car that they're trying to build a car in England that can go 1,000 miles an hour. It's powered by a jet engine and a rocket, which I think is
why? Just why?
Because you can.
Can we
for the same reason that these guys at Texas and Oklahoma leaked this story today? Because we can. That's why.
I just want the guy before he does his record-setting drive to say "Hold my beer" before he starts his drive.
All right, so let's wrap this thing up. Thanks again to you, Drew, for coming on board. Thanks to Bryson Turner for talking, about the Olympics and baseball. Thanks to Eric for producing that interview with Colton Gordon. Thanks to Colton. Congratulations on his selection by the Houston Astros. Wish him the best of luck. Healthy recovery from Tommy John surgery, and the best in the future. Hope to catch up with him again one day. Make sure that you follow us on Twitter, UCF_Banneret, Facebook.com/Black and Gold Banneret. And of course, blackandgoldbanneret.com, where we are the home for UCF sports content on SB Nation. You can check us out there at blackandgoldbanneret.com. As always, we try to have something new for you up there. If you don't subscribe to this podcast, please do on either Apple Podcasts or Spotify if you're an Android user. If you are not an Android, if you are not a Spotify subscriber on Android, you can follow us via any one of your podcast preferred platforms. Just search for blackandgoldbanneret.com. If you are a subscriber on to our podcast, we thank you so much. Please tell a friend, and don't forget to leave us a rating on either Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever your fine podcasts are downloaded. Drew, thanks again. I'll talk to you soon, all right?
Sounds good. Let's do it.
And thank you for listening. This has been the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. We will catch you next week.